Chris Graham here for Trailblazer RV, and we're going to take you through a new RV orientation on this 2019 KZ Connect 312 BHK. Starting right here at the front of the trailer, where you've got your propane and battery systems. To access your propane valves, you can open the access hatch right on the top of the cover, or remove the whole cover to expose the bottles themselves. Here you've got two 20-pound propane tanks. Both of these are full right now, and an automatic switchover propane regulator. You can see right now it's pointed to this bottle as the supply bottle, and the sight glass in the center of the regulator is red. As we open this bottle, that sight glass turns from red to clear, showing that propane is flowing. What we recommend is that you open the valve on both bottles, and then the regulator will completely deplete the first bottle before it starts to pull propane from the second bottle. Once it switches over, this sight glass will turn back to red, and you know the supply bottle is empty. Then you can switch the regulator over to the second bottle, remove the first bottle to go and refill it without ever shutting down your propane system. Behind the propane bottles is your battery. It's a 12-volt deep cycle RV marine battery. It's a flooded wet cell battery, so it does require some maintenance. We recommend a couple of times a year, pop these two caps off to expose the 6 cells underneath. Check the fluid level in those cells. If any of them are low, or especially if you can see metal plates sticking through the fluid, you'll want to top that up with some distilled water and put a good charge on the battery. There's 2 leads going to your battery, red to positive, black to negative, and we recommend that you disconnect this and take it off the RV for winter storage. Store the RVs inside, or store the battery inside somewhere where it's not going to freeze, and preferably, if possible, put a charge on the battery once over the course of the off season. This trailer has a battery disconnect switch, so red for off, green for on. And important to note, when you've got the battery disconnected, not only will it not discharge, it won't charge either. So anytime you're plugged into power or towing the RV with your tow vehicle, you'll want to have this battery disconnect turned on so that your battery is properly charging. Around the side of the trailer is where you'll find your freshwater system. So you can fill your freshwater tank from here with a normal garden hose, or preferably one of those white drinking water hoses, so you don't get that plasticky taste in your water. You can also hook into pressurized city water here. If you're going to hook up to city water, we recommend a water pressure regulator. Just a little brass piece about this long, goes on the end of your hose to maintain proper operating water pressure in the RV. Right underneath here is where you'll drain your freshwater system. So there's a little valve here. It's open right now. I'll just close it, but open that valve to drain fresh water from the water tank. Here in the front storage compartment, you've got access via this access panel to your water pump. And this is also where you can pump antifreeze through the system in the wintertime. By turning this valve open and this valve closed, that will open up the siphon line. The siphon line can go right into your jug of antifreeze. Then you can turn on your water pump to pump antifreeze through all of your water lines. Right here is your 30 amp power cord. It attaches towards the back of the trailer, and lots of sites that you camp at will have 30 amp power available. For those that don't, we also supply a 15 amp park adapter, so you can plug it into a normal household 15 amp power outlet. Here at the running gear, your tires are inflated to 80 psi. It's stamped on the side of the trailer, or on the side of the tire, that is, 80 psi cold, and we do recommend running the tires right at 80 psi. We also recommend periodic retorquing of your wheel nuts and repacking of your wheel bearings. This trailer has removable center caps here to expose a grease zerk where you can use a grease gun to grease your inner and outer wheel bearings. Now that does not eliminate the need to repack the wheel bearings. It does prolong the intervals though. So instead of recommending a wheel bearing repack every year, as long as you're giving it some fresh grease once in a while, if you can probably get away with a wheel bearing repack every 3 or 4 years. Right behind that is where you'll do your sewer tank dumping. The trailer comes with a 20-foot medium heavy-duty sewer hose stored in the rear bumper right now. So when you go to dump your holding tanks, hook your sewer hose onto here, other end goes into the ground, and always dump your black valve first. You've got the larger black valve and the smaller gray valve. The black is the sewer, so if you always dump that first, once it's finished draining, you can close this valve and dump the gray valve to use your sink and shower water to flush the contents through that sewer hose. That way nothing will be left in the hose when you have to disconnect it and store it back in the bumper. Right here is where that 30 amp power cord connects. We saw that up front. You've got stabilizer jacks on all 4 corners of the RV. So when you are parked in the site and relatively level, you can crank those jacks down to be snug with the ground, but you don't want to actually lift the RV with them. They're not designed to take up the entire weight of the RV. Nice and snug with the ground to take some of the side-to-side movement out, and you can maybe fine-tune your leveling with those. But the best way to level the RV side-to-side is to back it up on blocks on the low side. Here on the back of the RV, you've got your cargo tray. Spare tire is mounted on the cargo tray, and it's important to note that the RV doesn't come with a jack or a wheel wrench. So you'll want to make sure you have a wrench along with you that fits these wheel nuts, just in case you ever need to change a tire on the fly. Cargo tray is good for 250 pounds. That includes the weight of the rim and tire. So about another 200 pounds of cargo carrying capacity on the rack. Behind the cargo rack is your hot water tank. So we can access that from here. This is a gas electric model hot water tank. So if you're staying somewhere where you've got power hookups, you can run the tank electrically by turning on this black rocker switch down in the bottom corner. You also have a couple of black reset buttons here. If you ever overheat the water tank, most commonly by starting it up with no water in it, you'll have to come out here and reset these before you can start the water tank up again. This is also where you'll drain the water from the tank when you're winterizing by removing this plug at the bottom. It's a 1 1/16 inch socket, and on the end of that plug is a rod about that long. It's your sacrificial anode rod. So the anode rod corrodes over time to help preserve the inside lining of the tank. You will need to replace that rod periodically, but it can get quite corroded and pitted looking before you need to replace it. Typically every 3 to 5 years, depending on the quality of the water, it'll need to be replaced. Before you pull this out, make sure to bleed the pressure off of the tank using the pressure relief valve. Another hose connection here right next to the water tank is your sewer tank flush. So when you're dumping that black water holding tank, if you have a garden hose connected to here, preferably a different hose than what you use for your freshwater system, you can use this to spray out the inside of the black holding tank. It'll spray off the walls of the tank and keep the monitor probes clean so that your monitor panel reads accurately. Here at the outside kitchen, your fridge is electric only, so you need to be plugged into power or your generator for this fridge to work. Your stove, it's a 2-burner stove top, and it's propane. You do need to hook up the propane line for that. So right underneath here is where you'll find the propane quick connect, and it hooks up right here with the supplied quick connect hose. Important to realize on those quick connects, there's also a safety valve both on the hose and on the trailer itself. those both need to be open before propane will flow. Here you've got a couple more vents. Your fridge vent with a removable access door to access the back of the fridge for repair work or cleaning. But primarily this is just a vent. Just the fridge needs a little airflow in the back to keep it running properly. And your furnace vent right here. And this one gets very hot. So if you've got young kids around the RV, make sure they know to steer clear of that. This one has the Solera Smart Arm Awning on it. So you can actually control this awning from inside or outside the RV. To use the outside controls, you have to press and hold the unlock button until the green light lights up. And then you can use the control panel to extend and retract the awning. The awning extends 8 feet. But you don't have to extend it the full 8 feet. You can stop it at any point if you've got a tree, an RV, or a wash curtain in the way. And this is a height adjustable power awning as well. So once it's fully extended, you can pull down on this lower arm to lower one corner of the awning so you can control where your rainwater runs off. Before you bring the awning back in, put both sides back to the same height so that you can ensure the canvas rolls up straight on the roller tube. This Smart Arm Awning also has a couple of optional features. There is a Awning Light that runs the entire length of the awning. This one has a motion sensor, so if you press and hold the on button until the automatic lights up. And we may just need to activate that, but that will use the photo cell to sense when there's movement in the campsite, and it'll turn on the awning lights. And then there is also an optional wind sensor that can be installed on the awning. So if you install the wind sensor, you can use the little switch here to set 3 different wind speeds for the wind sensor. And the wind sensor doesn't sense wind so much as motion. So if the awning starts flapping around in the wind, it'll know that and it'll pull the awning in to prevent any damage. Your entry door step is the Aluma-Tread step. So to pull it out, grip under the bar with 2 hands, pull the first step out, roll the second, and flip the third. So flip, roll, and slide. And follow me inside and go through a few more things. So right here near the entry door are your main light switches. So a switch for your main bank of interior lights, also a switch for your interior blue lighting, and your outside awning light, which can be controlled from inside or outside. You can also extend and retract that awning from inside, and you can extend and retract your slide outs. So if we press and hold slide out, the main slide runs out. This is a flush floor slide, so as it reaches its full extension, it'll kind of sink down at the bottom to make a flush transition with the floor. And we'll hear a ratcheting sound when that's all the way out. Just like so. And we'll do the same with the rear slide. The rear slide's not a flush floor slide, so it goes out exactly the same, but it's not going to sink down at the end. We'll hear the same ratcheting sound when that slide is fully extended. Just like so. Come on over here into the kitchen area. Here at your stove, you've got a 3-burner propane stovetop. All 3 of these burners can be lit using the piezo sparker. And the reason that those second 2 burners took a little while to light is because we've just opened the propane valves. Anytime you change out a propane bottle or have your propane system disconnected for any reason, the first thing you should do is come to the stove, open up each of these 3 burners and light the burners. Once you've got all 3 burners lit, you know you've bled the air off of the propane system, and you'll have no problem lighting your automatic appliances, your fridge, furnace, and hot water tank. The only pilot light that you have in the entire RV is your oven. So you light your oven pilot right here, and to do that, you'll turn the oven knob to pilot on, push in, and hold this knob in while you light the pilot. Once you see a flame at the pilot assembly, continue to hold the knob in for 10 or 15 seconds for the flame sensor to warm up, and then you can turn the oven up to temperature. Once you're finished using the oven, if you just turn it down to pilot on, you can leave that pilot burning, or you can just turn the oven all the way off and relight the pilot next time you need to use it. Your fridge is an automatic gas electric nor cold fridge. To turn it on, press and hold the on button. And we recommend always leave it in A for automatic. When it's in automatic, it'll check for electricity. If it has electricity, it'll always run on that. In this case, it didn't have 110 volt electricity, so it started up on propane. You can override the automatic to only run on electricity or only run on propane. But it's rare that you would want to do that. You might find that the fridge cools a little faster on propane than it does electricity. But even having said that, it still takes several hours to cool an RV fridge down. So we recommend getting that fridge cooling the day before you load up, just so that it's nice and cold when you fill it with food. This one also has some temperature adjustment, 1 being the warmest, 5 being the coldest. I usually leave it on 3 or 4, but you may find you need to adjust that depending on the ambient conditions. For now, I'm going to set this back to automatic mode. And to turn off the fridge, press and hold the button for 3 seconds. Beneath the fridge is your power converter. So this is the power center for the RV. This is where you'll find all of your breakers for your 110 volt circuits and all of your fuses for your 12 volt circuits. You've got mostly 15 amp fuses here with a couple of 40 amp fuses, and not a bad idea to have some spare fuses on hand. It's not uncommon in an RV to blow a fuse. So if you have some spares, it won't be a big deal when you need to change one sometime in a campground. The converter can make a little bit of a humming or a buzzing sound sometimes. It's perfectly normal when it's operating under heavy load. It's just the converter's cooling system. Your thermostat mounted here on the wall controls both your heating and cooling systems. For your cooling systems, you need to be plugged into 110 volt power for that, for the air conditioner, fan, and the air conditioning itself. But just turn the system over to fan or cool. You can select your fan speed, low or high, and always on or automatic per the thermostat. The heating system only has 1 fan speed. So if we turn it over to heat and then slide the thermostat up to the temperature we're comfortable at, the furnace starts up right away, the fan motor anyway, but it's going to take 10 or 15 seconds before we hear the actual propane burner light up. You should be able to hear that. Just like so. So now, in a few minutes, we would have warm air blowing from our heat vents. Once the furnace or the RV comes up to temperature, or you shut off the system, exactly the same thing happens, only in reverse. The burner's gone out immediately, but the fan's still going to run for another 30 seconds to a minute just to go through its cycle. Down here near the floor is your propane and carbon monoxide detector. So this will do three things. It'll alert you to a potential propane leak. If you had a propane leak, you would almost certainly smell the propane before the alarm went off. It would alert you to a potential carbon monoxide situation, in which case you wouldn't smell anything. Or third and most commonly, it could alert you to a low voltage situation. This device is wired into the RV's 12-volt electrical system. So if you have a low RV battery, a low voltage on your RV battery, it'll chime just to alert you to low voltage. Here in the bathroom, we have your monitor panel. So there's a few things you can do from here. One, you can turn on your water pump to pump directly from the RV's water tank. You can also activate your hot water heater on propane or electricity. If you're plugged into electricity, you can heat the water electrically using this switch. Remember, if you're going to do that, that you need to also have the black switch on the outside of the tank in the on position. Or you can start the propane burner from here. And this red light comes on showing fault. That means that the burner is not burning right now. But just like the furnace, if we give that a second, we should hear it light up and that light will go out. Just like so. So now in 20 to 25 minutes, we would have hot water from our hot water tank. You can also check the level of your battery from here. You can see it's completely charged right now. Fresh tank is completely empty, black tank is completely empty, and gray tank is completely empty. There's also a notable power outlet in here. This is your GFCI outlet. So same as the outlets in the bathroom in your home with the test and reset button. The only difference in an RV is this is wired in series with the rest of your power outlets as well. So if you're plugged into power and you can't get any power from your outlets, come into here, press the reset button, and that'll reset the whole circuit. When you're using your RV's sewer system, you'll want to make sure and use a potent RV toilet chemical. They come in powder, liquid, or tablet form. Regardless of what you use, when you add new chemical, pour the chemical into the tank, push halfway down on the foot pedal to fill the bowl with water, and then push the rest of the way down to dump the chemical into the tank. The chemical needs some water to activate it, so always make sure you put water down into the tank whenever you add chemical. And you'll add chemical immediately after every time you dump your black holding tank. So when you finish dumping your tank, come in here, add some chemical, put some water down with it, and you should be good until the next time you need to dump your holding tanks. Here in the bunk room, not a whole bunch to talk about. Each of the lights has its own individual push button. And you can also access your hot water tank bypass valves from here by removing this access panel. And there's two screws, and you can access the back of your hot water tank where you'll have a valve on the blue line going into the bottom of the tank and a valve on the red line coming out of the top of the tank. If you close both those valves, it'll divert the water, or be it antifreeze, through the bypass line, so you can run antifreeze through your cold water system and your hot water system without filling that tank with antifreeze. There's an emergency exit window here in the back. So to open the window, just push out on the handle, and it can latch like that for airflow. If you need to use it as an emergency escape window, it hinges all the way up, and you can just pull the screen out using the tabs. We talked about the propane and carbon monoxide detector. You also have a smoke detector here, and it's important to note that the smoke detector is not wired into the RV's electrical system. It has its own 9-volt battery, so you'll need to test that battery periodically, and you can test that just by pressing and holding the test button until you hear the beep. In the master bedroom, not a whole bunch to cover in here. There's a second TV location on that wall. There's a TV backer in the wall. The sticker is not always in exactly the right place. The best way to find that TV backer is with a magnet. The backer is metal, so you should be able to locate it with a magnet. Don't use any screws longer than 1 inch. Your wall is only 1.5 inches thick, or a little more than 1.5 inches thick. So 1 inch screws or less, and make sure you find the metal backer. Bed lifts up for some storage underneath here. We have a second emergency escape window here, operates the same as the one in the bunk room. I think for the most part that covers it. Hopefully you've learned something about the 2019 KZ Connect 312 BHK. If you have any questions, you can always get a hold of us here at Trailblazer or check our website, trailblazerrv.com. Thanks for watching.